Hi, it's my great honor to be here with Reverend Ann. We are talking about turning fear into faith. Good afternoon. Thank you for talking with us. Would you tell me the story of how you made this work, turning fear into faith?
Yes, I will. The story I'm going to share with you at this time is one that began many, many years ago. It's hard to imagine that it was many years ago. It's been over 26 years now. But what happened is when I was about 18, I married my high school sweetheart. I was 14 and a half when I met him. I was a freshman in high school, and he was a senior. And by the time I graduated, we were still in love, and we decided to marry. We had a wonderful marriage. We did all kinds of things together, and we also had a beautiful family of 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Some of you know my daughter, Daphne. Around our 40th anniversary, wedding anniversary that is, I began to have a nudge, an inner nudge, that I didn't quite understand. But I knew it was important, and I knew that I was to pay attention to it. Well, about this time, my husband had begun to develop a cough that would not go away. I was concerned, naturally, but at the same time, getting him to go to a doctor. Ooh. Sometimes it's hard to get a man to go to a doctor, and he was one of those.
How'd you do it? How'd you get him to go?
I finally told him that we couldn't go on this way, and that I wanted to have a large and big anniversary party.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Now, when I mentioned that, my daughter jumped in and said, "Oh, but Mom, this is not the year. It's the 50th that we have the big party." And inside me, I knew I had to do that party this year. So we went on and had a beautiful party. If you remember, or perhaps you didn't even know, I was a member of China Williams Church, and we did the party there with congregants as well as friends and family. It was beautifully decorated. It was just wonderful, so full of love and happiness. Well, that was in November. We had Christmas, wonderful Christmas with our children, and by that time we had grandchildren. On January, sometime around the 1st, I had gotten my husband to make an appointment, and he went to see his regular physician, who sent him immediately to a lung specialist. Well, that specialist came up with a very shocking discovery for us. Don's lung, his left lung, had a cancerous tumor. And they thought at the time they could go in and do surgery and perhaps remove just a fourth of the lung.
That must have been terrifying.
It was not only terrifying, the time that we found out it was my daughter's birthday, and it was absolutely agony for her. But we went through it. On the 13th of January, Dawn had major lung surgery. And today they do things so differently than they did then. He came home about a week and a half later. They kept him in the hospital much longer than they do. Then he came home on oxygen. He did not like it. But he did not want to be without it. And as they tried to lower the oxygen, he refused to let them. And further on into his healing, which did not begin to even occur. By February 25th, I had to take him back to the hospital. Now, the point to all of this story is that I went from my parents' home into making my own home at 18 years old, and I had never, ever been alone, nor had I ever experienced the time of living alone anywhere. So when, on the night of February 25th, my husband died, leaving me with all of the cares in the world, I couldn't imagine how I was going to do it. How did you do it? Well, the first thing I should tell you is that Don was such a wonderful man and took such good care of me to my detriment that I had to learn to do everything for myself. I had to learn how to make my own decisions. We'd always made decisions together. I had to learn how to pump my own gas. I never had to take the car and pump the gas. He always had it full for me. Wow. There were many things like that that I had to learn how to do for myself. At that time, I had a group called Learning to Love Yourself, and we had already met several years, so we knew each other very well, and they knew my husband, and they knew what kind of person he was, and they stepped in. To this day, it makes me want to cry. These women came to my side immediately. From the time I arrived home from the hospital, they were at my side until my family could arrive. But this lovely group of people reminded me of a verse in the Bible, and it was just the one I needed to hear. It's Philippians 4, verse 3. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can't tell you how many times I used that prayer, but I did, and it got me through one step at a time, and suddenly I realized I was becoming more trusting, more self-confident, and that I had more faith than fear. I came through that. Took me 3 years to grieve through it, but I actually came out on top with the help of God, Don's presence, my beloved Love Yourself group, and all my family.
That's wonderful. What a great story of turning fear into faith. But where did Frank come from? How did that happen?
Well, that
Weren't you
was
afraid?
another wonderful thing that happened. At the end of 3 years, I had been in the child care business in my own home, so I never had to go and find a job or anything to support myself. I was already doing that. And the neighbor next door said to me, "Do you square dance, Ann?" And I said, "Well, I did when we were in high school. We square danced every Saturday night." And she said, "I belong to a group, and I'd like you to be my guest next Monday night. Would you like to go?" The strange thing that happened is that just before this woman came out and spoke to me, I had said to myself, "Now, Ann, if you want to have another person, another man in your life, you can't sit out here on this porch all by yourself. You have got to get out where there are men." And God opened that door. He surely did. For that night I went with, her name was Edna. I went with Edna. I was sitting waiting for the first dance, and I looked up out the door, and in walked this silver-haired fox. He bought his ticket, and I watched him walk directly to me. When he got to me, he said, "Do you have a partner to dance with?" And I said, "No, I do not." "Will you be my partner?" And I said, "Yes, I will." And we got up and formed the first square. He took my hand, and when he did, I said to him, "Are you a married man?" And he said to me, "No, I'm a widow." "How about you?" He said, "I'm a widower." And he said, "How about you?" And I said, "I'm a widow." He said, "Good, let's dance and dance and dance." From that moment on, we went every single dance night and danced. We were still dancing up until about, I guess it's been about 8 years ago now.
Didn't you have a health scare with Frank?
And then came a health scare with Frank. By this time, Frank was 92 years old. And we didn't know exactly what was going on with him. But again, I had to say, let's go to a doctor. This time, he agreed, and we went from one doctor to another doctor until we finally found a doctor that gave us an answer and told us that Frank probably had some spinal cord complication going on and that he would need surgery. However, at 92, they did not know whether he would even come off the table. Well, again, I felt a little fear, and perhaps maybe a more of little fear. I had had a chance to have a second love in my life, and this love was wonderful also. We had done many things, traveled together, and I wasn't ready to lose this man. but I had to do something. And so at that time, I had another dear friend that came to me and said, Anne, do you know the Serenity Prayer? And I said to her, I know of the Serenity Prayer. I have never read it, and I do not know what it's about.
One of my favorites.
Whereupon she brought me a copy. She brought me the whole copy, but the part that I used was the beginning. God, grant me the serenity to accept those things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And as I began to repeat those words, I began realizing that I could work with this prayer, that I could let go every time I said that, and put all of my fear and my challenges, because I was Frank's complete care worker. By this time, he could do nothing for himself. But I learned little by little, by repeating that prayer, that I could let go and know and trust and have faith that God would bring about only the highest good for Frank and for myself. And it began for me not to make a difference as to what that was. If it was time for him to make his transition, I could do that with him. But if it was time for him to live, we could rejoice together and move on in our lives. Well, the next day after the surgery, as I walked down the aisle towards his room, here is this man of 92 who they didn't think was going to come through the surgery, sitting in his chair, waving his hands at me, yelling, "Come, come, come." And he said to me, "Where have you been? Where have you been? I've been waiting so long." And at the same time, he said to the nurse, "I need to use the bathroom." And she said, "I'll bring your walker." He said, "No, I want my cane." He took his cane, and he took the first real steps he had taken in 6 months. He walked to the bathroom, took care of himself, came out and said, "I want my clothes. I want to go home." And I brought him home, and he's here today. And next month, in October, he will be 95 years old. Ladies and gentlemen, if you understand the difference between fear and faith, put your heart and your soul and trust in God, for God will bring you only good. And it makes no difference what it is. There is good in everything. Thank you very much for letting me share. And so it is. Amen.
That was a beautiful story. It sounds like you were able to move out of fear by using scripture and by using prayer.
Yes.
And I love that you used the Serenity Prayer. I use that one all the time.
I have it on my bedroom wall, and every night when I go to bed, I repeat it, because it's a prayer that has carried me through, and I know it will carry me through to the very end.
Yeah. Amazing prayer. Thank you so much. And again, it has been my honor and privilege to be with Reverend Ann. Thank you.
Thank you.